Queer theory represents all kinds of sexual orientations, genders, and desires that may be considered by society as unconventional or odd, which in fact they aren't. Just because no one in the world talked about it throughout humanity's lifetime, now, when the questions of gender and sexual orientations are perceived as a social construct, LGBTQ+ society started to fight for their rights. Queer theory is mostly aimed at disrupting and politicizing all conventional and usual relationships, normalizing gay couples, transgenders, and other members of the LGBTQ+ society. Queer theory gained its popularity mostly because of different forms of art, where, for example, gay people were presented as the ones who have a right to exist, and not just as an outcast of the healthy society. Cinema had a particular influence on the popularization of the LGBTQ+ theory. And in this video essay, I will try to compare the movies in the context of my research question: how does the setting of the diegetic world influence the depiction of gay couples in cinema? I want to explore the topic of how the depiction of gay couples were influenced by the setting of the world in relation to two films: Brokeback Mountain 2004, directed by Ang Lee in the USA, and Free Fall 2013, directed by Stefan Lackant in Germany. Both movies are about gay love stories complicated by the presence of their own families and disapproval by society. Moreover, the mentioned films are both dramas, which actually gives an audience a clue about endings, and Brokeback Mountain is also Western. And the genre of Western, in terms of its ideology, predetermines masculinity, as well as the setting of the movie. Brokeback Mountain is considered to be the turning point for the advancement of queer cinema into mainstream. The movie tells a romantic story between Anis Del Mar and Jack Twist, which started in 1963 in Wyoming, when two men looked for a summer job and ended up being hired by foreman Joe Aguirre to help his ship. Anis and Jack started their complex relationship back then and continued to meet on the Brokeback Mountain throughout the years secretly. The story ended quite tragically when Anis found out about the death of Jack when he tried to reach him after a long separation. Free Fall was being compared to Brokeback Mountain quite often, referring to the characterization and the overall setting. Indeed, a lot of cinema features were similar in the movies. Free Fall is about relationship between Mark Borgman, a young police officer who has a wife and a kid on the way, and his colleague Kai Angel. Mark met Kai while doing training in the police academy. At first they just talk, but soon Mark finds it impossible to resist his attraction to Kai. The society in the police academy, the presence of the wife and child make their relationship almost impossible, and the story does not have a happy ending either. Third thing that comes to the audience's mind is the context of the world our characters are placed into. In Brokeback Mountain, Anis and Jack met in Wyoming, a USA state, in 1963. In the middle of the 20th century in America, homosexual relationships were considered unnatural by society. They were treated as scum, bullied, and badly beaten by people who actually believed that being gay is an abomination of nature. Therefore, for the gay people themselves, it was a shameful fact to admit, not to mention accept their sexuality. It is also important to say that Wyoming, which mostly consisted of ranges of mountains and prairies, implied activities that were popular among real masculine men, like holding a farm or being a rodeo rider. In Brokeback Mountain, the time and traditional patriarchal society hugely influenced the depiction of the relationship between Del Mar and Twist. From the very beginning, characters felt pressure from society, tried to hide their relationship. They knew what would happen if someone ever found out about them. The attitude to Jack changed irrevocably in the blink of an eye when Joe saw him kissing Del Mar. The situation only confirmed the point of society being hostile to the relationship between Jack and Anis, making them seem impossible in the context of the world in 1963 of the USA. In Free Fall, the story takes place in Germany, nowadays in the 21st century. Action unfolds in the police academy, again, which implies the presence of practically the same masculine society. Notwithstanding the fact that in the 21st century, and especially in Europe, the LGBTQ community was accepted, and in Germany as well, there are some groups of people who still retain their conservative and traditional values they are not ready to give up. The presence of such groups makes it harder for gay people to exist in this society. Police Academy in Free Fall is labeled as much as rodeo and farming was in Brokeback Mountain. Mark and Kai relationships were revealed only in the last part of the movie. However, the whole academy found out that Kai was gay when the unit raided a gay bar while Kai was there. This resulted in the lecture on tolerance in the academy. The existence of this lecture in general tells us about the potential problem of discrimination, referring to the fact that the problem of acceptance still exists. Several fights and verbal homophobic assaults that Kai undertook only proves the mentioned point. So it wouldn't be exactly easy for Mark and Kai to reveal their relationship, because then their reputation in the academy and around their friends would be lost. External conflict is visualized through setting by the establishment of minor characters that surround the main ones and also influence them. In Brokeback Mountain, Ennis and Jack had their personal lives in the first place, and secondly, as a cover for their secret relationships. In Freefall, Mark is obliged to be with his wife, at least because she is pregnant, and Borgman just could not leave family, which was created initially by himself. One of the most important themes that were raised in both movies was the acceptance of the homosexual orientations by the main characters themselves. The difficult part is that the society initially was pushing the main characters into the boundaries, so both external and internal conflicts arise. In Brokeback Mountain, only heterosexual relationships were present. Therefore, Ennis, who was raised on a farm and was frightened of turning out to be gay because of his father, and Jack, who is a rodeo rider, could not even think about the possible attraction between them. This inability to predict and non-acceptance of their sexual orientations hugely influences the expression of their love. The first intercourse was harsh, Ennis was extremely tense, and the whole process looked a lot like fight. The first sexual experience between them probably happened like this just because the characters weren't fighting each other rather than fighting themselves. They could not let their desires darken their minds all at once, and they started physically resisting it. It particularly works for Ennis because Jack was always more neat and gentle in the face of acceptance, more inclined to indulge his desires. In Freefall, almost identical scenes happen, with the same physical resistance, anger, and not really romantic tension. And the reason for this controversial expression of feelings is the same. Mark, who maintained a standard habitual life, could not let the thought of him being gay to enter the mind. Next thing worth mentioning is nature, which plays an extremely significant role in the development and reflection of the relationships in both movies. In Brokeback Mountain, the love story starts with nature. Wide open prairies and mountains and the absence of other people around give the characters a way of escape from the real world. Moreover, throughout the whole movie, Delmar and Twist get away from their families and run back to the mountain where they can stop lying to everyone and just be themselves. Brokeback Mountain is a place that gives characters a way out of their fake life, where they need to pretend to be normal, to be like every other man. It would be also important to say that Ennis and Jack escape to the nature to accept their own nature of being gay. Both characters lie to their wives and say that they're going fishing, when controversially stop deceiving themselves. They go back to the mountain, they unite with not only surrounding nature, but with their own. In Freefall, the situation slightly differs, probably because of the time and the possibility to meet for the couple in Kai's apartment or gay bars. However, the story itself also takes place in nature. Nature in Freefall also plays a role of place where two men can be themselves without fear of condemnation for who they are from society. By the way, the whole concept of jogging holds throughout the movie, which can be interpreted as the desire to get away from the truth or just from yourself. It starts with Mark trying to overcome Kai in jogging, and their first sexual experience happens during running in the woods as well. And the movie ends up with Mark running alone in the training. I would say that in some way Mark tried to run away from himself, from his problems, but the point is, nobody can outrun themselves. Coloring plays quite a significant role in the narration of both movies. In Brokeback Mountain, coloring deceive an audience and give hope for happy ending. Probably, such coloring was used to represent the feeling that Jack and Ennis had together. Whereas in Freefall, we have from the very beginning dark, gloomy and grey colors, which prepares for the corresponding ending. We can look and interpret the endings in different ways, but I would say that we have to focus on the general mood of them. In both films, characters do not have satisfactory endings, and this is the result of the influence of the setting. In Brokeback Mountain, the same as in Freefall, setting is extremely important and conveys the same motives of pressure from society and a possibility of love in general, despite the difference in geography and of production. The depiction of gay couples in the diegetic world is strongly affected by setting, whose core function is to show the development of conflicts. External one, pressure from the society, and internal one, non-acceptance of their sexual orientations by characters themselves.